Welcome back, everybody, to the latest version of the More Kingston Smith David's Review weekly delve into the world of advertising. Today, as always, joined by Jason Stone, and delighted that we have award-winning director Nicolai Fuglsig with us as well. Particularly delighted since Nicolai is shooting at the moment and has come off set to join us. Nicolai, if I can, maybe we could just start by getting your view on the challenges of directing in the post-COVID world, since you're actively doing that as we speak.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I think we were all, and I particularly was eager to kind of get back into production after months of lockdown with my family in Los Angeles. You know, it was interesting. You know, I've already been tested twice. To this production, I'll be tested one more time next week. Right now, I am shooting in Portugal. I will be shooting next week. But it was as eager as I was to sort of get back into it. I feel that already in the casting process, having gone through hundreds of videos, it was very clear to me that our cast people was really marked. About the sort of pandemic that keep on plaguing us. It was almost shocking, how marked, almost shell-shocked, people were. I felt that the spark was sort of missing a little bit, not only during their videos, but also during callbacks. And I do think that people operate and sort of, under a dark cloud of fear and anxiety still, as everybody's rushing back into production, as everybody's eager to get back out there, shoot, perform, be creative. I certainly felt personally that it was a little bit maybe rushed, not so much about the all the precautions and the face mask and the distancing and the staggered tech scouting, but in terms of the creative spark, as much as I felt I had it, it's a different reality when you're relying on so many people when you're a filmmaker and trying to launch a huge production, So that was definitely something that was maybe not surprising, but it was very evident very quickly.
So do you believe that the limitations on production are also impacting your ability to be creative?
In some ways, yes. I really think it depends on which country you're shooting in. I think I have not shot, during a post-pandemic in America, where I know they're very strict. Right now, I'm in Portugal, that seem to have had a very good handle on the pandemic. And generally, they have very good safety precautions here. And I feel they have a control over it, But that said, they actually have more relaxed rules than they actually have in America. So we are definitely shooting with people that are screaming on top of their lungs. We are shooting with people in close proximity to each other. So in a way, it has changed a little bit. I would say, there are certain things that we can't really do, we still can't do. And of course, it's all about safety for our cast and my crew and myself, so we'll be cautious going forward. But I feel there's a lot of people that say, oh, but we have to find alternative ways to do things. We have to rely on more post-heavy work. And yes, that's correct. But, maybe we should try and come up with different stories where we don't have to rely on that kind of intimacy as much, of things that we could jeopardize safety. And I think there's a need for that too,
You've struck on something very important there, I think. The scripts that you've seen in the last, say, month, as we're starting to emerge out of this, are you seeing the kind of ingenuity you would hope to from agencies in terms of both recognizing practical limitations and also recognizing the way in which people need to be depicted in a world where the sort of literal physical dynamic between people has been so altered?
It's interesting because well, first of all, I have received boards probably a couple of months ago that actually we were probably at the height. We were almost about to peak in America. And that was a project that ended up being an all CG sort of a escapism extravaganza, that I really loved a lot. And it was highly creative. It was some of the better creatives I've seen in years, actually. Unfortunately, didn't end up going my way. But then since then, I feel there's more and more boards coming out, and it's interestingly enough, the project I'm working on right now is actually about social distancing, is actually about safety measures. So we are actually filming some cast with face mask on, because the creative idea, is about, or is in part about that. So I have not had the sort of the script where we all forgetting about the pandemic, and we all forgetting about this sort of a systemic racism that is a tumor plaguing the world at the moment. I haven't seen those scripts yet. I certainly hope that the scripts going forward, and the boards going forward will reflect the world we live in today, because it's certainly a changed world, definitely.
And are you seeing a different approach from different territories? Do you think? I mean, obviously, you do a lot of work in America. Are the American agencies responding a bit better, perhaps?
I have received very few American boards. I just received one here overnight that is to shoot in Europe. Sort of global campaign to shoot in Europe. And I don't think anybody is rushing back to commercial production in Los Angeles. Film, TV, yes, but then again, I just read lately, that a couple of shows have been shut down simply because they just rushed into production. They thought they had it under control, and they had to kind of pause for a moment. And I hear rumor that we're seeing that within commercial production, even in London. I know people that are shooting at the moment that also had to pause and rethink their approach a little bit. I really think that it's important because, when I watch TV and I watch pre-pandemic advertising, I cringe when I see someone shaking hands or hugging.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, I've also seen some American advertising where they actually had face masks on. It was almost like an average day scenario where people were interacting with face mask on. And while that is should be inspirational and should be right and correct, it feels awkward to me, creative, to see it. There's something sickly about it, even though it is our new way of living. I think it's a fine balance how you go about it. I think it feels foreign to me, but we have to embrace it. That is the conditions that we live under now, and it could continue. Until we find a vaccine,
You've historically been very innovative, Nicolai, and something like Sony Balls, you chose to shoot real time as opposed to do it in CG. Would you make different decisions today that you would have made maybe back then?
In terms of that particular project, no. I'm always a kind of in-camera guy. I come from documentary, so I like things that are very tactile. I like to work with human beings,
But is that still possible, I suppose, is the point, whether that would be a more, because presumably production now is a slower process, I'm guessing.
It is a much slower process, I'm experiencing that right now, much slower, shockingly slow, actually. And of course, it sort of kills the momentum as well. And on top of that, then the spark is gone, and then all the safety precautions, it kind of feels awkward. You feel like alien and foreign in the environment. But I would by far trying to do as much as in camera as possible. I don't believe trying to create a kiss, an intimate kiss, in CG. It doesn't work for me. It might work for others, but it doesn't work for me. I would rather wait with telling those stories. I would go to a place in the world where there was really a control over the pandemic, like New Zealand or Denmark, where you can actually do scenes like that, obviously with certain safety precautions and testing in place. But I'm not rushing into anything like that, where I cannot control the safety of my crew and my cast.
I think they probably need a health and safety person from the pornography industry on set to supervise. They've been talking about
that. It's interesting, but talking about Sony Balls, and looking at the boards that are coming in now and talking about creativity. If there is a time, and I think there's always a time, but if there's a need for that kind of advertising where I believe it's more art than advertising, it is now. I feel we are all desperate for a sense of escapism. You know what I mean? We don't want to be reminded about this sort of a dark cloud that are hanging all around us. You know, yes, it's important to keep having great, powerful social stories, especially in the light of the systemic racism in America. But at the same time, I think escapism in advertising, I think, is a route sort of worth pursuing. And you can do that, because it's less about the human interaction, but it's about maybe a feeling, you know what I mean? And I feel I'm more inspired by art at the moment than I'm inspired by a lot of other stuff at the moment.
I hope the agencies are listening, because I couldn't agree with you more. And it's about striking a balance, operating within the conditions, sending the right messages about how people need to behave, but not overtly, not constantly drumming that into people, but finding, as you rightly say, escapism is so important. Coming back to something you said before about it being a slower process, is that properly being taken into account in terms of providing you with enough shoot days?
No, it's not. Here's the thing. I think we're all eager to get back to work. We all, eager to go out and earn a paycheck. You know what I mean? So of course we're all desperate to kind of bid these jobs so we can sort of book the job. And as you know, in that bidding process, we have been trying to take in consideration that things will be substantially slowed down to like 25 or 35% slower than normally. But of course, some clients that are sitting remotely conducting, approval things over Zooms, confined in their own houses, I feel that very often they are disconnected from the reality of being out in the real world, executing this right now. And at the moment, we are getting more and more things put on our plate without taking consideration that we are actually out here dealing with it. And we have to think about the safety of all of us, crew, cast, me included, So that there's a disconnect there that simply do need to be adjusted. I think that's a learning curve for everybody. At the moment, we're definitely taking a slapping, and I will say I'm very concerned going in to what definitely should have been, under normal circumstances, should have been probably a 7-day shoot. I'm doing that in 5 days, and that's even not even considering the new 35% slowdown because of the COVID rules, so I'm very cautious. But what we are doing is I'm changing my style a little bit. We're doing a little bit more heightened reality, docu style. We're doing 2 cameras. We are trying to maximize our time on set, because we have less and less time now. I noticed it when we did the tech scouting that we just conducted yesterday. We had to do staggered tech scouting. First, me and my team going in, then art department, then technical crew. It took forever. We ended up being hours behind, really. And I worried, during a proper shoot, with all the check-in of cast, extras, and everything, that we could be slowed down even more. And as you all know, guys, it does kill the momentum. It does kill the momentum. We as shooting crews in commercials are very fast normally because we have a lot to do in very little time. We don't have the luxury of a big long TV or movie production, especially. So I'm definitely worried going into next week. I'm excited, but I'm cautiously worried.
My last question then, sorry, Graham. My last question then on that score. Do you the worrying thing, I think you sound like you're being highly responsible, but the worrying thing on the back of everything you've just said is that it's going to leave the corners being cut and people not really abiding by the required safety measures. Do you think that's a concern?
It is a concern. I will say it really depends on the local rules. We are on a slightly different guidelines here in Portugal since the local government and the government in general had a better handle of the pandemic. We are allowed to have cast interacting, in an apartment, screaming on top of their lungs. In America, I don't think that would have been allowed, So I know in Denmark, they have been shooting for over a month and doing a bunch more intimate stuff than we'll be able to conduct, in other places. So it really is down to a case-by-case basis, you know what I mean? And also up to the local guidelines, I am definitely eager stick to all and every rule we can. It is difficult because you sometimes forget certain things. There's a process to this. There's a learning curve to all of this for all of us, and I know there will be mistakes made, and I have a natural instinct for pushing the creative boundaries, in everything I try to achieve, and I have to sort of pinch myself and try and pull back sometimes, but I'm definitely trying to follow the rule here as much as we can,
Nicolai, you've highlighted obviously the fact that a lot of the initial commercials were about the pandemic and basically people trying to deliver messages of togetherness. Have you seen anything in the States that has kind of really excited you as a kind of good work during this period? I'll let Jason comment about what he thinks in the UK after you've commented.
As I mentioned, I did see one board that was incredible. That board would have been amazing prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, because it was all CG and it was really pure escapism. It's very rarely we have these boards where you're almost like off the planet in a way, in terms of escapism. And I'm a big fan of that kind of thing anyway. So that is something I really truly was very excited about. I would say I did spend in frustration of not getting any interesting boards at all. I did spend my time writing a complete seven episode TV show, during the 4 months that I was in lockdown in Los Angeles. And that was definitely my escape, into a world I could completely control myself, me and my international writing room I set up. So that was inspiring for me, but no, I haven't really seen anything since. I think it's too early still.
Jason, rumor has it you may have seen something you liked. So I'll let you finish by telling us what it was.
It was an Aldi ad from Australia. It's very funny, but and whilst it does address the situation, it dares to do it with humour, and it's humour going back to the escapism that Nicolai was talking about. We badly need some humour, and I think that a more confident industry would know that you can do that if you get the tone right. You can be funny at this time. There's lots of people being very funny on social media, and they're not getting slammed for it. And I think brands are being way too cautious in terms of their approach. And I'd be very interested. I'm sorry you didn't get the job that you were so excited by, Nicolai, but I hope it comes to fruition, because the other thing I'm hearing, and I expect you are as well, is that anything half decent that gets out there is then getting withdrawn before it actually even gets made. So I really hope that that they found someone almost as good as you to make it, and that when we see it, that it holds up to what the potential you saw in it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you both. So to summarize, we have production back, which is a huge plus, albeit in a much kind of slower and more cautious world. Thank you both, and we'll see you again next week.